So it happened. Louie C.K. has had his downfall. Man, if you didn't see this coming, then I guess you weren't paying attention to what was going on in the world, which is fine. You don't have to. And this isn't that important compared to all of the crazy things going on in the world right now, all the tragedies and all the infighting and so much going on right now that's worth discussing and dissecting. But for a couple years, the rumors were out there. It wasn't even a couple years; it was a long time. But I had first become aware of the Louie rumors, like 3 or 4 years ago, I think. And I remember when I first heard it, I was like, wow, and I was like, that's kind of weird. And I also, what I found out was that it was completely believable. It was the weird thing, like I couldn't not see Louie C.K. doing it. It was easily able to make in my head like him being like, hey, do you want to see me see me like jerk off and like masturbate, like, oh, look at this thing I'm doing, I'm whacking it, like I totally just, I don't know, it seemed like something he would do because throughout all of his work as a comedian and a director and a writer, there was always a hint of so much truth to the man of who he was. One of the great things about Louis' material and how he executed it was that he could talk about really screwed up things, like really messed up things, and he could frame it in a way with the way he kind of looked so blue collar and how he talked about it in almost a philosophical way, but he simplified it all and made points, but he could talk about really screwed up things. He's one of the only comedians out there, white comedians, who could use the N-word in a set, and he could find a way to make it work. He had such great bits when he really started to peak, because a lot of people don't know Louis worked for Chris Rock for years. He was one of Chris Rock's writers and wrote a lot of Chris Rock's famous jokes, and he did the movie Pootie Tang, which I'm a fan of, and he had worked for years on television and stuff like that. He knew Robert Smigel and Conan O'Brien, and it wasn't until and he had a show on HBO, Lucky Louie, which wasn't on that long. But he really didn't hit his streak until there was that point somewhere, I guess in his early 40s, where he really started talking about being a family man more and his kids and all that. And then it was like overnight, within like a year, like overnight, there's kind of a story a lot of the comedians talk about when Louis really became the guy, when he really started to tap into the next stuff, And then, yeah, within a year, he was the biggest comedian out there. And then that continued into his TV show, which became a surprise hit. And then he started being in movies. He was in American Hustle, and he was in a Woody Allen movie. And then all of a sudden, everyone knew who Louis C.K. was. And it was this guy who worked for all these years and had been around a long time, and he'd finally found his place as this bald guy with the goatee. If you go look at young pictures of Louis, he always has his hair and he's clean shaven. So it's that's a story in itself. But you always heard of these stories about how he was an exhibitionist. He would ask women to go hang out with him, and he would masturbate in front of them without even asking. Sometimes he would just kind of do it, or if he did say it, they thought it was a joke. And I'd heard about this a lot on the internet. Like, there was articles about it, and a lot of female comedians said it happened. So I was just like, well, that's screwed up. That's weird that he did that. And then the last few months, once all this stuff started coming out about Hollywood, once the Kevin Spacey thing happened, and, what started with Harvey Weinstein, but the whole effect of that all these things started to come out, and all these men started to get accused of things, and even doing stuff to other men, like Terry Crews, he was assaulted, and James Vanderbeek. I knew immediately, like, as soon as this started happening, I go, well, Louis over. And it's not because I'm intelligent or had foresight, it's just, if you were following the stories for a long time and you heard those, you said, well, that's probably going to come out now, and they're going to probably take, because now, you lose everything. Kevin Spacey's going to get written off House of Cards, and, apparently Spacey had been a creep forever, too, and they're cutting him out of the new Ridley Scott movie and replacing him with Christopher Plummer. Harvey Weinstein's never going to work in the industry again. It's happening. You're pretty much gone. I doubt we're going to be seeing Dustin Hoffman or Richard Dreyfuss in anything coming out in the next year. That's all I'm getting at. So I knew, I was like, well, oh man, Louis C.K. is going to fall, and he's on top of the world. God, no one's got the success Louis has right now, because he doesn't just have the success like with money and popularity. He's respected. A lot of comedians respect Louis. There's a lot of big comedians that comedians don't seem to like as much, which is fine. That's subjective. But he was really respected. It was like a lot of people considered him to be one of the smarter comedians out there, and a lot of people are fans of him back in the Opie and Anthony days when he was on there with Patrice O'Neal and Bill Burr. And unfortunately, Patrice died, but him and Bill went on to have big careers. They're bigger now than they ever were. Louis could sell out stadiums now. So I knew it was coming. I saw the writing on the wall. And with Louis, that truth that was always in his material that we were so that was appealing, which all comedians have. It goes back to the art of the comedy. Lenny Bruce. You talk about you observe things in real life and then find comedic ways to approach those things. Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes the truth hurts. You hear those things about Louis, and when they're in your head, kind of in an abstract way, it can almost be comedic. You can think about it that way, and you can kind of almost see it play out in a Louis episode in a way. You could see that scenario, him going with two women and then jerking off in front of them and not realizing he shouldn't really be doing that, but he's just in the moment or something. You can almost play in your head, but then once it becomes real, once the articles are out and everyone trusts the media again, all of a sudden, we all hated the media, now we all love the media. Then it comes out and you're like, whoa, okay, it's real now, Now, I want to make this clear before I go a little bit deeper in this video. I do not want Louie C.K. to be mixed in there with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Kevin Spaceys and all that, because as far as I know, those guys are all being accused of possible rape and drugging people or trying to get people drunk. And the Louis situation, the most screwed up thing about what he did, I feel, looking back at everything I've read, apparently, his agent and people were trying to keep these girls from going public about this, and he kept trying to apologize to them privately, and they're basically keeping people quiet. And that's so screwed up. He was using his power and influence to keep people from finding out about him because he knew it was going to be a bad story. That's awful. But I just want to make it clear, I don't, everyone's acting kind of like, there's some people act like he's a rapist. I want to make, there is a difference between what Louis C.K. did, which is still screwed up and I don't agree with, to what a rapist does, okay? That's why he's, sexual misconduct and not necessarily assault. You'll see that misconduct because a lot of these women looked up to him, because he was popular and they thought, oh, maybe something will happen here. Not sexually, but like, oh, maybe he'll want to hire me for something, or we could talk about doing something comedy. Maybe he could teach me something. Maybe I can learn lessons from this guy because he knows how to do this. That makes total sense. It's like, why wouldn't you want to hang out with Louis C.K. if you were a comedian or just a normal person? Like, I want to see what this guy has to say and do. But the fact that, yeah, he knew what he did was wrong and he was trying to cover it up so much. And then there was a period where he was just denying the things, and he didn't even really talk about them. And it felt like it was going to get swept under the rug. And, man, it's just like Louis couldn't help himself, He has a movie that he was making that's coming out called I Love You, Daddy, starring Chloe Moretz. And the movie's about him having this young daughter that starts hooking up with an old John Malkovich, an old, I guess, filmmaker. And it's all about separating the art from the artist. And apparently, according to some sources, the movie had a masturbation sequence that was very much like the events that we hear about in real life. So, for some reason, Louis made a black and white film trying to be Woody Allen. He did his Manhattan, I feel like. Because if you go watch Manhattan, Woody Allen's dating a 17-year-old girl, and you're kind of like, huh, I wonder where that's going to go. It's kind of like the writing's on the wall once again. Hello, Suni. Are you 18 yet? Do you want to come on my movie set? I've been coming on there all day. But it just becomes the thing where Jesus, I like Chinese food. I like it very much. It becomes a thing with where you're like, okay, well clearly he's taking a movie about a guy in his 40s dating a teenage girl, and all of his friends are like, maybe you should do that. It kind of, I don't know. It's one of those things, man. Like, the artists kind of make those movies, and Louis was making this film that had so much stuff in it that is just tied into what this all became. Like, hey, can you separate my art, my work, and what I do from me? And apparently, from what I heard, what I read about the film is that it's quite messy. And it's all over the place, and it's trying to be Woody Allen, basically. Even watch a trailer. But, I think it's an interesting premise for a movie, but it has a line in the trailer. He's sitting there on a couch with someone, and she goes, we're all perverts, let's just face it. Why try to fight it? Everyone's a pervert. That's what we are, It's almost like Louis made that film as a statement to try and almost justify his behavior, which I'm not saying that's why he made that movie, but it's an odd thing. The coincidence of it all is very strange. So that film's gone. They're trying to lock that up because, oh my god. And his show's over on FX. Very popular, critically acclaimed, long-running comedy series, that I've seen every season of, gone now. They're talking about ending. I think they ended Better Things, the other show he was producing that he worked on. That was a great show. So pretty much Louis done, like in that sense, that all of his stuff's gone now. This stuff, because the idea was basically he uses his power and his influence to do things he shouldn't be doing. And he shouldn't be put in these situations where he can do that. You understand the company's point of view from what they're thinking. I understand that they don't want to have this guy here who, the press is going to turn fast. Once the New York Times has an article out on you, you're pretty much, the people are on the side of the women now, very much so. But he makes this salacious film, he makes this, and he's always been that kind of guy, I remember that SNL bit he did about child molestation where it must be pretty good. Because, if you said my favorite things to eat is a candy bar, and if I was told you can't eat that candy bar ever again, if you do, you're going to go to prison, I'd stop eating the candy bar. So he said for them, it must be better than the candy bar, I'm upset. That's why it's when truth hurts, because the truth of this hurts me because I hate that Louis did this stuff, and I also hate that all of this stuff that's great about him and all the things that I really liked and what I liked about a show, even if you don't like the guy, I liked it, and it's upsetting that that's all done now. And how people are even going to view him now in the future is all going to be skewed. And I don't even know if he's going to ever get to perform comedy again for at least for a while. I don't even clubs. Is he going to be able to go out and do stand up? Probably eventually that'll happen. But it's weird because he was a stand up comedian who reached the peak success that you would want in a lot of ways, and now he's gone right back to the bottom. Which is really interesting. So let's read a little bit about Louis here, what he said. His response to the allegations where he said they were true. I want to address the stories told to the New York Times by five women named Abby, Rebecca, Donna, Julia, who felt able to name themselves, and one who did not. These stories are true. At the time, I said to myself that what I did was okay because I never showed a woman my dick without asking for it, which is also true. But what I learned later in life, too late, is that when you have power over another person, asking them to look at your dick isn't a question. Well, I'm not really sure if that's entirely true, but I get what he's saying. It's a predicament for them. The power I have over these women is that they admired me, and I wielded that power irresponsibly. I have been remorseful of my actions, and I've tried to learn from them and run from them. Yeah, you made a movie that was kind of about that. Now I'm aware of the extent of the impact of my actions. I learned yesterday the extent of which I left these women who admired me feeling badly about themselves and cautious around other men who would never have put them in that position. I also took advantage of the fact that I was widely admired in my and their community, which disabled them from sharing their story and brought hardship to them when they tried because people who look up to me didn't want to hear it. There is nothing about it that I forgive myself for, and I don't know, and I have to reconcile with who I am, which is nothing compared to the task I left them with. I wish I had reacted to their admiration of me by being a good example to them, and as a man, and given them some guidance as a comedian, including because I admired their work. The hardest regret to live with is what you've done to hurt someone else. And I can hardly wrap my head around the scope of the hurt I thought I brought on them. I'm sorry I'm having trouble reading that. It's very small font I'm reading right now. I'd be remiss to exclude the hurt that I've brought on people who I work with and have worked with, whose professional and personal lives have been impacted by all of this, including projects currently in production, the cast and crew of Better Things, Baskets, The Cops, One Mississippi, and I Love You, Daddy. I deeply regret that this has brought negative attention to my manager, Dave Becky, who only tried to mediate a situation that I caused. I've brought anguish and hardship to the people at FX who have given me so much, the Orchard who took a chance on my movie, and every other entity that has bet on me through the years. I've brought pain to my family, my friends, my children, and their mother. I have spent my long and lucky career talking and saying anything I want. I will now step back and take a long time to listen. Thank you for reading. So what does this leave us with? Looking at everything that we have. What Louis said, what the victim said, losing everything. All these shows, not some of them that he was all directly involved with. He was just a producer on some, although he did co-write a lot of Better Things. I don't know. It leaves us in a weird place with Hollywood, doesn't it? Because the place we're at now is that a lot of powerful men, and I mean very powerful in the industry, are falling, and it's becoming the age of the strong women, and there's time for change, and everyone seems to be happy. Everyone seems to be rejoicing that things might change and that we're finally exposing Hollywood and the fall. I did a whole video on this, the fall of Hollywood, which is exactly what this is about. This tied in with the returns they're getting from most movies outside of stuff that Disney makes, and just the general future of things with streaming and all that. Louis is going to be a fine example of someone who really lost absolutely all that he had, from just a few mistakes he made as a person because he was so flawed and screwed up, and that's part of probably what made him brilliant. That he did this stuff and it's come back to ruin everything. He threw it all away just because he jerked off in front of some women a few times. Which is just ridiculous. To think about. You probably never thought he was going to be that famous, but it's like, wow, dude, yeah, you screwed up. So my question here at the end is: there forgiveness? Is there forgiveness at the end of the road here? Do we let Louis come back? Do we move on from this down the road? I don't mean right now. I'm asking: is it possible? Can we heal? Can everyone heal? I don't know. I don't know what the future holds. I'm scared about a lot of things, and it's not because I don't I want things to get better, but I also am worried that there'll be such crazy reactions. There'll be reactionary to keep things from really getting changed. If every studio and every network and every producer just starts firing everyone and ends everything associated with that person, it seems like within a day they do it. I don't think that's a good way to handle things. I think there's a show like Better Things. Maybe let it try to stay on without Louis. Just take away his name on it and his money. I don't know. I just feel like you kind of you throw out everything and then you don't have much of anything left. Um, and this isn't talking about Harvey Weinstein, and I'm not here defending Louis. I'm not defending him, so don't misconstrue this. I'm just scared that the truth is going to become more diluted with people. The truth is going to become less of a thing. It's going to be because the truth is so painful. Truth is very painful, and a lot of truths are coming out right now, and it depends on how people handle them. Because now you're seeing the power. The Wonder Woman is saying Brett Ratner can't work on this movie, and I totally get why she says that. But that power is going to happen. A lot of people are going to be losing their jobs, and it's not a bad thing. A lot of these people are hacks. Louis is one of the only ones I consider to have been doing actually good stuff. Everyone, Kevin Spacey's been phoning it in for 15 years, as far as I'm concerned. But that doesn't, whatever. But I guess my fear is that a lot of people are going to lose things that weren't as guilty as other people, and it'll keep escalating until just an accusation will be enough to ruin you, and it won't be that you actually did anything. Now, Louis, it's pretty much confirmed. They have all the evidence, and that's when he seems to care, is once the evidence comes out. So it's very telling where Louis stood on this and how much he actually cared. He doesn't really give a crap. He gives a crap now because it's affecting his wallet. And that's kind of my cynical view on all of this stuff. Nobody really cares. You can applaud for Roman Polanski and give him the Oscar, and then years later, you're like, all right, Louie C.K. can never work in this industry again. It's like, wait a minute. Where was that when Polanski was making movies with you guys and winning Oscars? Where was that? Where was the booing? I don't know. It's a weird time. It's a weird time because things are changing so fast, and in this world I feel like we need comedy and we need comedians to give us a perspective. And I I understand why Louis C.K.'s voice is silenced, but I cannot deny, if I'm being honest, that I'm not going to miss that voice, even if I want to try to be as basically virtue signal, tell you like he's a horrible guy, I hate him, I hope he never works again. I hate to say as a person, even though I think what he did was really bad, I I can't it's never that simple to me. I always think there's more to situations and more to people than just that, but what do I know? Really, what do I know? I don't really know anything. Um, Louie, if you're out there, get yourself together, man. Get help. Fix it. Mel Gibson made a comeback, so maybe one day Louie will make a comeback. But yeah, truth hurts. Life hurts. Life's long and painful. It doesn't just end when you get married. It doesn't just, when you have kids. It goes on a while after that. It doesn't stop when you hit those goals. The next day, the sun still comes up and you still have to do, you still have to live and exist. And that becomes a difficult thing in itself, just existing for these long stretches of time where you don't know how all those days are going to add up. Life isn't one, a 3-act structure like a movie. Life's a series of a bunch of moments put together. And Louis, a guy who spent his, life and became a star off viewing those little moments and finding stories to tell within them. Now a story's being told that silences him, that takes him out of the discussion. He's not in it anymore. As he said, I'm going to listen. I'm not going to talk. Well, I'm glad that's happened with him, and I get it, but hopefully not everyone, and this goes for not just white men or comedians, I mean everyone, doesn't take that tactic and just listen and not talk. I think we all need to talk. Excluding some of those people, I think we need to talk and have nuance here, because if we start getting radical with this, we're going to go too extreme on one end, just like Hollywood did on this end, where they just didn't seem to care for all these years while they were doing things with the casting couches and how they treated so many of these women. They just didn't seem to care, So that's a thing in itself. But man, I don't know. So then there's George Takei. Oh my, oh, hey boner, as he said so famously on Howard Stern. Now, God. I know this is a weird video. I thought I had a plan for this. I thought I had a structure and I knew what it was about and I knew what it was. But now that I'm in here, I'm like, man, this is just like, it's heavy. Just thinking about it all as a whole. All the stuff coming out and how it's going to keep continuing and what we're going to go into. Don't get fatigued. Make sure to check your sources. Don't just assume somebody did something because you hear it on the internet. Even though I'd heard this stuff about Louis for a long time, I say believe victims, but we also, we can't eliminate due process and we can't eliminate the, just giving people the benefit of the doubt sometimes. Just sometimes. And this goes for men and women and everyone. You need to give people, because we never really know what happens with any situation. You're just getting a point of view on a lot of things. Like even with the George Takei thing, there's not evidence, and it's just one guy who accused him, and there's that Stern clip that's screwed up. But, you don't know, so you can't just assume. You got to wait and see. Although George Takei tried to blame Russian bots. Oh, my God. It's all just going to cringe, man. It's a hellhole. It's a shit show. I don't know, man. Just try to love each other, man. Try to respect each other as just people and human beings. And before we get to all this discussion of toxic masculinity and this or that, let's just try to see each other as people still and not lose that. Because once we start to lose that, it's just complete tribalism fully, and we're just going to be barbaric. And we need to, you got to remember, people are human beings still. There's still layers to people and the things they do. So I hope that complexity that makes art so interesting and comedy and all the things that I enjoy, I hope that isn't gone, and yet people still don't have to suffer to get those things. I hope we can find a new balance, and hopefully this is the shot, the adrenaline shot Hollywood needed to change things. But like I said, what do I know? Like, comment, and subscribe. Leave your opinion, please. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, and try to give me, I really want to hear what you think about all of this, and don't get. Some people want to get aggressive, or they just want to. It's all. I can't wait to watch Hollywood burn up in flames, or it's it's like, I told you, always believe the victims. Rape culture. What's? Can we find a silver lining here? Can we find hope through each other? That's what I want. Oh, and rewind your VHS tapes before you bring them back to the store.